Looking good, Italian Job.
I'm feeling good, Tommy boy. How are you, brother?
Man, it's been a thing. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I do want to share, if you don't mind. In honor of our brother Drop Thrill, I today ended my last day of. We're not even sponsored by this service, but I'm going to put them out there because it was a good experience. BetterHelp.com, mental health. And I had struggled quite a bit, and it's not too public knowledge. Some handfuls of guys in Natville knows about it, but just kind of hit a bump. Fell into a bit of a divot. You know, I always talk about my grandfather who used to quote that a rut was a coffin with the ends kicked down. I found myself in a rut and didn't have the answers. And it took my shield lock to say it's okay to not be okay, but you can't do it by yourself. Because when you are okay, we want to celebrate in that as well, and we want to lift you up. So I say all that to say, fellas, June is Men's Health Month. Not to say that you have to get a subscription to the magazine, but it is to say that you need to take care of yourself. There's a litany of people that depend on you. There might be a daughter that is counting on you to walk them down the aisle. There might be a son who is looking to you for tidbits of light to give back to the world. There's an M out there who depends on you for a litany of things as well. So schedule the physical. If you're over 45, go do the thing, but do the right thing. And if your head isn't right, it's okay. It truly is okay. I am Thomas the Boy, and I support this message that if you need help, ask for help. You're surrounded by a ton of high impact men, if you are hearing this podcast, that want to help you. And if they can't help you because it's not their professional mindset, let them connect you to the help that you need, because the world is counting on us to be high impact men. And sometimes it takes an outside force to give you that gift to reset the engine. So that's a long way, IJ, to say, dude, I have reset the engine. Today was my last day, unless I need it again, and I'll dip right back in. But that's my personal plug for a service that helped me out and reset. And how the hell are you, my friend?
Well, thank you for sharing that first and foremost. And guys, everybody who's listening, you know, Tommy Boy says, you know, someone relies on you somewhere, someone needs you. And for far too long, we have said, that's something that I'm going to hide. I don't need to share with anybody. That's my own cross to bear. And guys, get help if you need it. There's no judgment here. And let me tell you about a little bit of help that this isn't mental in aspects, but last week, Tommy Boy carried the podcast solely by himself for the sole purpose of we had every intention on recording together. But our trip back from New Smyrna Beach for our vacation, that should have taken 6 hours, took well over 8 because traffic, you know how that goes. And my kids, who are small, they expired. And they reached the point of, if I try to record anything while driving right now, all you're going to hear in the background is yelling and screaming, and it would not end well. So TB, thanks for carrying the weight last week. I would be remiss if I did not give a shout out to the men of F3 New Smyrna, who've been around now for 1 year. They're starting to grow, add some more additional AOs. So big shout out to McDreamy, Newman, Heartthrob, and Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell is a listener, which I found that pretty cool, that we've got a guy down in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, who's tuning in and listening. So shout out to those guys. I had a great trip with the family last week, but appreciate you, TB, for carrying the weight while I could not record with you. So thank you. And I listened to it, and it was top notch as usual, showing that you are the brains and the beauty behind this operation. I appreciate you.
One of those two things may be 50% true. So you were missed, and I was surrounded by a bunch of high impact dudes who were doing phenomenal stuff. And it was, all I got to do was sit back and listen and take notes, and enjoyed it, literally coast to coast. And we know around the globe, we're doing big things, you know, on my Facebook feed, and I'm sure it showed up across the F3 Nation social media presence, but the guys who rolled up after a workout and dropped flowers on the anniversary of some Bad News Bears, that was powerful to see today. And I tip the hat to those guys, because in the midst of all the chaos and mayhem, right, that we see every day, there is a way to step back and be like, oh yeah, it truly isn't about me. It's about supporting what is needed across our community, and our communities need different things. And so to see what happens when guys are like, what if we just did this thing? That really makes me feel good, because it underlies the fact that what we are doing matters. And so when the Charleston guys got together and did their thing, simply showing up at Mother Emanuel and laying flowers, it gives strength to the stories that may or may not be heard. And they heard the stories, and they showed up, and they did exactly what they needed to do. Nobody asked them, nobody paid them. It was just the right thing to do. I know guys across North Carolina that have shown up and decorated for Christmas, right? For somebody who needed they needed to focus on their family. And they also would have benefited from some dudes showing up and probably horribly singing Christmas carols, but they showed up and did the right thing. And that's just really cool. It's just really cool. Yeah. And speaking of reigniting and keeping that flame burning, really, it's more about sustenance. How do we sustain that flame? And so you had sent me something on our comms about some really great things coming out of Texas. And we tapped into Camo, who is, if I'm not mistaken, out of Katy, Texas. He's their Nantan. Is that right? Maybe.
That's right.
Yeah. There he is. There's the voice. So
yeah.
I took one glimpse at what reminded me of an 8 block. This in instance is a 4 block. And it is their regional focus that they dip into quarterly to reset or to course correct as needed, or to celebrate every 3 months, and then figure out where they can have an even bigger impact. And so, Camo, you're joining us from Texas. Can't thank you enough. We're going to give you the floor with our standard F3 intro. Name-a-rama, how long you've been doing F3, and who gave you your name?
All right, sounds good. Hey, pleasure to be here, guys. First off, T-claps to you guys for taking on mental health head on. Love it. Love that you're just standing up with that message. So my name's Camo, hospital name Kevin Weaver. I've been around since December 2016. And I was EH'd by my good friend Inferno when he was part of getting F3 Houston off the ground. He EH'd me by one of the best tactics that I've still yet to observe. He said, hey, man, I'm doing this thing called F3. Tomorrow I'm going to lead for the first time, and I'm super nervous. Would you come and support me? Nice. And I said, you can't leave a brother hanging like in something like that. So he got me out. And of course, as the usual journey is, I was hooked right off the bat. So yeah.
As it should be. There should be plenty of nerves getting into F3, because that means you care.
That's right. That's right. So the name is kind of a funny story in itself. Inferno actually tore his hamstring during the warm-up. So, how many workouts does that happen? Oh, gosh. Yeah. So the bishop, who was one of our mustard seeds, took over. And when we got in COT, he's going through the typical questions. And he says, what's your favorite color? And, first thing popped in my head, camouflage. So there it is. It stuck.
There it is.
Nice. That's full support, man. That's full support for a guy. He wasn't just nervous. His body was like, I may tap out.
Yeah. Well, he may or may not have been wearing a wrestling singlet, but that's a story for a different day. We'll stay on track here. Yeah.
How did he not get Grape Smuggler as an F3 name?
Fruit of the Loom.
Yeah.
Fruit of the Gloom. Fruit of the Gloom.
There it is.
Fruit of the Gloom.
Another great name.
Yeah, put that one in.
Camo.
Put that one in your pocket for later.
That's right. Keep that one fresh. That one might have some wheels, some sustenance to it.
Yeah.
Well, Camo, look, I want to dive into it because I think this is important, and I want you to. Well, let me back up. I want you to share what you guys have set up with this quadrant, and I also want you to address what 5 years ago I might have been concerned about is, wait, this isn't my job. This is F3, and I love working out with these guys. So you've got a quadrant that checks in regularly on what's working, what's not working, or where are our impact points showing up. I might fear that sounds corporate, right? Or that sounds like a spreadsheet or a Google Doc or whatever. But that stuff does matter because it does have an impact, and it's up to us to disrupt the status quo and use it correctly. So tell us first, let's start with why you created this repeating conversation. And then we'll get into the what is it tackling? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sounds great. So
right.
We call this recurring meeting, which is more or less on a quarterly cadence. We call that the state of the region, right? So simple little play on words. If we rewind the clock, we first planted the flag in Katy in October 2017 as part of F3 Houston. And we starfished off and spun off as an official region January 2021. At that time, we were 3 AOs and around 65 active packs. And 2021 was just absolutely explosive for us. Today, we number 16 official AOs. We got 3 OTBs, 2 of which will launch next month, and upwards of 400 active packs. So
wow.
blessed with just tremendous expansion. But with that type of expansion comes its own challenges. And that's really where state of the region comes in. We found that it was getting difficult to keep guys aligned and connected, especially as the region expanded geographically. And so myself and our Weasel Shaker full house, we just were thinking about it one day. We're like, okay, the SLT meets every 2 weeks initially, now once a month. How can we get the other key leaders in the region engaged? And so that's when we came up with this quarterly concept of state of the region. That's a time when we bring the SLT and the AOQs together, all together, in one room, preferably in person. And so as you look at kind of how that works, as to the why, we think it's really important because your AOQs are some of your most critical frontline leaders. I mean, these are the guys that are modeling the way day in and day out for the packs. And in Katy, we very much empower our AOQs to be full-on starfish leaders. I mean, they've got full authority at their AOs. Most of them will stand up second F liaisons, third F leaders, et cetera. And so it's critical that you keep alignment with where you're trying to head with the region overall.
So you have the 4 quadrants. So for those who are going to be watching or who's going to be seeing this, we'll have this linked. But those 4 quadrants, are those the kind of your focus areas? And what are those 4 quadrants and what entails each one of those quadrants?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Italian Job. So this year, as we looked at 2022, we like to kind of help the region understand from a big picture what we think is really critical. And this year, those things were retention, shield lock, operational excellence, and then intentional LDP. And so it just so happened there was 4 of them. They were sort of each deep and distinct. And we thought, what's the best way to convey this message to the guys? We decided to do it with just a single pager, just a single page slide document, which it sounds like you guys can share. And if we dive in, I mean, retention is something I think everybody struggles with. We know that growth equals recruitment plus retention. So if you do those 2 things well, your region's going to grow, right? And so for us, it just involves reminding the guys that, hey, we've learned some best practices. We know some things that work really well around retention, things like sustaining the triangle of trust between the battle buddy and the proud papa. We encourage having a cafeteria after every single beatdown, localized second F, etc. Shield lock. So right in with retention comes shield lock. Once a guy gets locked in with other men, really starts kind of sharing struggles, he's not going to drift off. So that's super critical. Operational excellence is all about maintaining the standard, sharing those best practices, encouraging things like free to lead, and then intentional LDP. In Katy, we very much believe in a leadership pipeline. Your job is to accelerate yourself and accelerate the men around you. And so that entails things like really encourage study of free to lead and Q source, but also Q schools and AOQ schools, et cetera.
So I see the retention queue at each AO for tracking and outreach. That's the first time I've seen a retention queue. What is a retention queue? What's his responsibilities? What does he do? And how does that help? So walk us through that guy.
Yeah, so retention queue is something that arose organically out of one of our AOs, the corridor. They were experiencing rapid growth. We know our AOQs have a ton on their shoulders. So they designated a guy who's not the AOQ to just kind of be in charge of tracking. So what the retention queue does is he tracks when guys come on, he tracks when they post, and most importantly, he flags when they start to drift away. And so, he just basically raises the flag to say, hey, has anybody checked on this guy? Designates 2 or 3 guys to reach out. And as I'm sure you guys have experienced, that can make all the difference. Just a quick note to say, hey, man, miss ya. Looking forward to having you back.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
You guys are a lot
TV.
nicer than we are, because I've seen guys just flat out call each other out with like the most embarrassing social media picture. We borrowed that from a group called the November Project, where it's like, hey, haven't seen you in a while. And it's like them with their, finger 3 knuckles deep up their nose or something they found on an old on an old tweet somewhere.
Well, there may or may not have been instances where a strange group of dudes just shows up at a guy's house in the dark. So, that works too.
Look,
monkey humpers on the Ring doorbell.
Yeah,
That's
it's
right.
happened.
That's right. Yeah.
Love hurts, gentlemen. # love hurts.
Hey, TB, I saw your eyebrows raise when he mentioned sustaining the triangle of trust. I think you were interested in that Proud Papa, Battle Buddy, FNG, that thing. I saw your eyebrows. Am I right in saying that you want to hear more about that?
You are correct. It may or may not be because the eyebrows are the only hair on my upper head. But yes, in fact. So I'm familiar with Battle Buddy. I've served on several and participated in several grow rucks. Maximus is my Battle Buddy. In short, that means we've peed together. Yeah, he is an ultimate stud and one heck of a him. But Proud Papa, tell us about that and how you leverage that in the retention quadrant.
Yeah, so when you put yourself in the shoes of an FNG, he maybe knows one guy when he shows up. That's the dude who he aged him. He may not even know that guy well, right? Maybe some guy that he met on a street corner. It's like, hey, you want to come to my free workout group in the dark? So this guy's starting from an uncertain place. He gets assigned a Battle Buddy. That's standard practice for us. So every FNG gets a veteran who is not his Proud Papa, who kind of guides him through his first post. But that's the minimum of what a Battle Buddy should do. So our Battle Buddies are then responsible for pulling the FNG into our comms channels, and then ideally following up with him a few times throughout the next week to make sure we get that second helping. That the next day, most of the time, unless they're bat flippers when they come in, guys are ultra sore and their bodies are in pain like they haven't probably felt since high school sports. So the Battle Buddy's job is really to encourage him to work through that, to come post for that second helping, and just to kind of stay on the journey. And again, that's just one of those little things that seems obvious, but it has a huge impact on getting guys back.
Yeah,
So
any instance you have to tap into a guy and let them look. At the end of the day, I'm a firm believer that all we want as humans is to be seen and hopefully be heard.
That's it, man.
You're creating multiple opportunities on each front for both of those things to happen. And it's intentional. It's not just I think some of the worst words uttered is, hey, how are you? And nobody really means it, right? But in F3, I would push back that we do mean it. We don't ask what we don't want to know. And if we do, then guys self-correct that. What you've done is laid out a floor plan and a blueprint for that to be, for every bit of it to be intentional and to have an outcome, right? Like these guys, it seems like these guys are responsible for some outcomes, and not in a bad way, not in the, hey, we're not going to pay you twice as much next year as an AOQ if you're not performing to these standards.
Yeah.
It's somebody did this for you, and the way that you pay for this free thing is to give it away to the next guy. And it just so happens that Grape Smuggler is our FNG today, and so you're partnered up with them, and we want you to follow up via email or texts, today
That's
or tomorrow with the how the heck are your legs feeling after leg day?
That's exactly right. And you get a couple of those connections, and pretty soon it becomes much more than a workout, which we all know that it is. But it's that critical first exposure, first engagement to really show this guy that, hey, this is something different. It's worth coming back to and plugging into. And so the triangle of trust really helps with that.
Camo, I think that we could do an entire month of podcasts on each one of these quadrants because there's so much stuff in here. Tommy Boy and I just recorded a couple weeks back kind of a safety podcast, not because we wanted to, but because it was necessary. We are F3 ninjas, run in the dark, and we don't do a good job historically of looking out for the health aspects of our buddies that we're in the gloom with, noticing when someone's not acting right, not feeling right. But you've got in here medical and emergency awareness in the operational excellence. What does that mean, and what can the guys learn from it?
So the critical part there is that if a negative situation does arise, a medical or emergency situation does arise, the guys have got to have that critical information. And it starts with the basics. Where are you? What are you going to tell the emergency response team, right? When you dial 911, how are you going to give them the cues and clues to find you? The second thing is basic preparation, right? Does somebody have a cell phone? If so, is that cell phone locked? Do you know how to access it? And then another part of that is just awareness by the packs. If you didn't count off before you took off, are you aware if somebody drops off the back, right? And so we experienced in the early days of Houston, actually losing a man. That was a previous F3 podcast. I highly encourage you to listen to it. But I just think that made us all very conscious of this, and we learned a lot about how fast time will accelerate in the fog of war when it sets in. And so, we do basic things like ensuring everybody knows the address, and also occasionally we'll do like a man down drill, just to make the packs conscious of, hey, are you paying attention to the guys around you? Do you have a sweeper who's going to check on each and every six, including the guy who suddenly drops out? Those kind of things.
Bro, that last sentence alone is a whole year of conversations.
Yep.
What is our address? What is the man down? I'm not going to spoil it, but anybody who knows Grow Ruck knows what a man down exercise can feel like. And it's the worst because if that situational awareness isn't in check, you are effed. And so is the guy who is down.
That's right. Yeah.
So without putting too much pressure on it, but with giving it its just due, that's a powerful exercise. Man down in the middle of your typical quote unquote Wednesday workout, Saturday workout. Man down, what do we do? And then
that's it. See
how guys respond. Dude, this is great. I knew this was going to be big, but I didn't realize how much potential we could have here. Let's do this because this could set up a tone for future conversations for the guys who are hearing this. And I hope lots of guys are. We talked about the why. We talked about the how you do it. We're going to share this graphic and let them know, well, it's put right there that this is F3 Katy. Let them know that this was born there in the sense that adapt and modify as needed. But would you do us the honor of picking one bullet point out of each of the four sectors? You don't have to talk at length about them, but why that one thing in that one quadrant is important. And I will put the disclaimer out there for you. These are in no particular order, nor is the bullet point you're picking that important or the most important, unless you say that it is. Obviously, they all carry weight because they're all included. But if you'll start with retention and then we'll just go left to right, top to bottom. How's that sound?
Sounds great. So retention, something that is a tactic that's very simple to adopt is a cafeteria after every BD. When we first started, we would do cafeteria on Saturdays, as I think a lot of regions do. During COVID, one of our AOs, shout out to the Spigot, they started just having a guy bring coffee. They would drop a couple tailgates. They would hang out for, 10, 15, 20 minutes and just shoot the bull. And what we found is that is a tremendous opportunity for guys to connect on a super easy to pull off level. And so we adopted it region wide. Again, very easy to execute. Ask one or two guys to bring thermoses of regular old brewed coffee, drop a tailgate, bring some cups, bring some styrofoam cups. But the ability for guys to hang out for, 15 minutes and discover some commonalities, as you said, the ability to feel like you've been seen and maybe been known a little bit, tremendous thing to get a guy back. Once a man discovers a common bond with another guy, he's probably going to return to the workout the next day. So that's the one on retention I'd speak to. Been huge for us. On shield lock, There's a concept called 30-30 that was created by our third FQ, Papa John. It's been transformational for the region. That could probably be a podcast all by itself and probably should be. But basically on Fridays, we do a thing called 30-30, which is a 30-minute intense beat down, usually sandbag or ruck. And then it's a 30-minute circle up discussion on a topic. And the whole region will discuss the same topic in multiple locations. And it goes deep. It's open to all men. It's not necessarily a spiritual topic, although it often goes there. But what happens is you really start to pull men's souls out. Guys kind of get vulnerable and get real. And what it did for us is it allowed that deeper level of connection than you usually can get in just the workout, right? You start to really get to know a guy. Tremendous tactic for bonding the region, advancing the second F, advancing the third F. We've put together a 30-30 SOP. Happy to share that to whoever, but it's been a huge thing for us. Operational excellence. The thing when we set out with Katy was we all agreed collectively that we were going to maintain the standard, and we were going to strive to pursue the standard with excellence. And so that's just something that's ingrained into us. And I think when you start a region with the collective agreement that you will hold each other accountable to maintain standard in everything you do, it sets a powerful tone. So we don't slack on pre-blasts. We don't slack on excellence at the workout. We run it, per the book. VQs will often dry run their VQ to ensure it's up to standard. And then back blasts, they're expected to hit the standard and have all the necessary components. Because again, if you start slacking on the standard, your region is going to erode away gradually. It's not obvious, but it will happen over time. And then on intentional LDP, if there's one thing, there's so much in here. Obviously, that's a huge category. If I had to pick one, it's again just a basic mindset of encouraging that starfish leadership at the AO level. I think I was talking to GMO in the early days, and he said, man, I don't know why there should ever be a reason to limit leadership opportunities within F3. And so we really embrace that. Our AOQs, they're all tremendous leaders. The packs that are at those AOs are watching what those guys do and, modeling after them. They are aspiring to grow in their leadership. And so what happens is you get that leadership pipeline, and expansion has to happen. You have so many guys ready for the next step, so many guys that are passionate about giving it away because of what it's done in their life, that you're forced to expand. You don't have any other choice to. So I'd hit on that one. It's been huge for us.
Dude, Camo, I can't tell you enough how impressed I am with not only the document, but your ability to speak to this. If a man listening right now doesn't get anything from it, he's not listening. There's so much golden content here. Thank you for sharing it with us. This is terrific. If guys want to get in contact with you, if they have questions and say, Camo, this is really cool, but I don't really know what you mean by the following. What do they do? How can they reach out to you? What's the best way to contact you? So if guys have questions, they can get with you.
Yeah, man, I'm on Slack as Camo, Katy, Texas. Hit me up there anytime. You can reach me via email, kweaver8@gmail.com. And, I have to be clear, it's not just me. I'm blessed to be in a region with tremendous leaders around me. These guys push me forward every day. And I think we advance each other. And what's helped our region succeed, if I had to distill it down to one thing, it's just tremendous leaders that believe in the mission and 100% just feel the need to go activate the men around them. So,
Camo, what you're talking about is being free to lead. And
yes, sir.
That's what I love, that everything that you've said just underlines that, whether it's you or the guys around you, your SLT, it's hard charging. And it's not a guy running through a brick wall by himself. It's a guy knowing that he cannot physically do that, but a bunch of guys that are like-minded or aimed in the same direction can charge through any wall.
That's
and
right.
You have done that, and you've put it to, in this case, 4 little rectangles that are green, blue, yellow, and red. And again, we're going to put this in everything that we share the podcast with, and it's done with intention. So it's all the things that we read about in Free Delete. It's all the things that we read about in QSource. And I would argue, and correct me if I'm wrong, you haven't reinvented the wheel. You've focused the laser in such a way that this is now something that guys can pick up and reinvent or use verbatim and apply it to their regions.
Yeah, I'd say that's right. I mean, we learned a lot from our time with F3 Houston. What Duggar and Bishop did by bringing it here was incredible. They lit the fire, and we had the benefit of kind of watching what went well and what didn't. And we just had the chance to optimize when we started Katy. And really, what State of the Region comes down to is a chance to come together to kind of reaffirm the things that are really important to you in terms of goals and priorities. And then most importantly, to listen. The SLT gets feedback from the AOQs on things that are going well and not. And the AOQs are able to cross-share with one another and say, hey, guys, these are the things that are working well at our AO. You should try it. Or maybe the reverse. Here's the things we're struggling with. What do you think? And just the space for those conversations will move regions forward.
It's almost like the starfish concept actually works, which
imagine that. Yeah. If only somebody wrote a book about it. That'd be good.
There's got to be something out there.
Yeah.
What would you call it? Like Starfish and the Spider, or maybe Free Delete, or QSource? I mean, there's just so many possibilities.
There is.
Well, Camo, I'll say this, man. I knew I was going to be excited and fired up and motivated by this conversation. That's been exceeded. I will also remind guys that the first F is the first F because it's the first F. There's 2 more coming right behind it, and those are the ones that are exponentially more important. You'll get shout outs and accolades and maybe a dad bod post about your first F performance, and that's great. It means you're accelerating in the fitness. And if you're not accelerating in that area, you're not going to be able to achieve your desired goals or the things that people are expecting of you that we talked about at the top end of this podcast without that fitness level. However, there's so much more to be explored in that second and third F realm. And that's why we were excited about today, because it's not about, I can do 50 push-ups without stopping, therefore I am. It's about, how do I not only train the next guy to be able to knock out 50 without stopping? How do I connect him to the cafeteria, to the conversation about something bigger than himself? And then how do I remind him that he has a fire inside of his heart to give that away to the next guy and the next guy and the next guy? So if anybody ever thinks that F3 is about completing a BRR, you're going to have a hollow F3 experience. It's the guys who figure out, oh man, I was able to do this because somebody believed in me in a way that I couldn't believe in myself. And I'm going to formulate that conversation for this dude that I see rifling through the candy section at the grocery store, yelling at his kids, or whatever, or fill in the blank. But the guy who isn't wearing an F3 t-shirt, doesn't have an F3 sticker on the back of his car or truck, I'm going to tap that guy and say, I have this thing that really works. And not just because I can do 50 push-ups, but because I just showed up in Charleston and gave flowers in honor of lives lost, because life is way more bigger than just me. And I want to be around those people who figured that out. So I applaud you. I could talk all day and just praise you and the guys of Katy, but I won't, because this is supposed to be a short podcast and I've got life to live. I will just conclude by saying, IJ, I'm going to hand it over to you. Katy, Camo, I applaud you in the Katy region, because you guys have figured this out, and I'm thrilled that you are willing to give it away in this capacity.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. I think that the guys in Katy, when they realize that we have the chance to make generational community impact, then they all rallied around that. And that starts with taking men all the way down the G3L journey. So pleasure to be here with you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, brother. It has been our pleasure. It's been our joy. Can't wait for other folks to hear things.
My bad. And we're back.
Okay. Yeah, the technical difficulties. We're going to blame it on the hailstorm that may or may not be hitting the Natville area.
Yes.
Let's just close it out by saying thank you, Camo, for being with us, for sharing with us. And here's your challenge worth trying. This weekend's Father's Day, man. So to the dads out there, thank you. Thank you for being the men that your children need, the husband that your wife needs. But we all have a dad. He may still be with us. He may have passed on. Let's remember our dads. I was told something this week that really resonated with me, which was live a life so that your kids are not reliving kind of the struggles that you had. You know, if you had a bad relationship with your dad, live a life so that your kids don't have that same relationship, that they don't go to therapy for the childhood that you had. So, men, be the dads that you need to be. Honor the dads that we have. They may not be your biological dads, but let's just honor the men that are making an impact in this world. So thank you guys. Happy Father's Day. Tommy boy, honored to spend time with you. Camo, great to see you, brother. Thank you for joining us.